Hey everyone, it's Tommy from the Goalie Crease Network, and today I am extremely excited to be able to show you guys the brand new Koho 589 Pro pads, which are exclusively sold by Goalie Monkey. So, you guys know that I have a very long history with Reebok and CCM and the old Koho pads. So I was very excited when I had the opportunity to get this Koho set in here, use it on the ice, and see just how does it compare to the XLTs and the CCMs. Now, granted, I'm not going to really compare those here today, but what I am going to do is tell you a little bit about the performance and what kind of a style pad this is, and maybe if it's right for you, you guys will check it out online at goaliemonkey.com. So, let's get started. So let's start with the leg pads, because obviously that's the one most people have questions about. It is a little bit different than the XLTs and the CCMs, so we'll run through those a little bit, and I'll take you through the technical specifications, even though I don't really care about the materials that much. So let's talk about the styling and the material just for a little bit. Now, you guys know me, I'm not too much about the technical specifications. I really don't care what it's made from. I just want it to perform. However, this is reinforced Gen Pro through the front, and that makes it extra durable. So I've actually had a couple instances already where skates got really close or hit the front of the pad, and there hasn't been a scratch or a tear or anything so far. So I think that's pretty great. Another thing too is I really like the styling of this pad. Some of the pads recently have maybe gotten a little bit busy, and this one can even be a little bit busy if you pick a lot of different colors, but I think this one works out really well if you go with a 2-color scheme or a 3-color scheme, and it seems to really complement each other well, so I think that's pretty cool. So everyone wants to know about the performance of the front of the pads. How do those rebounds kick out? And I am very happy to say that it's actually sort of a medium between the XLTs and the CCMs. So, if you remember, the XLTs really kick out those rebounds, the CCMs really deaden the rebounds, and what I've noticed on these pads, especially through the knee roll, it deadens them like the CCM, but in some areas up here in the top, it is a little bit squishy, and so it can deaden the rebounds, but I actually find that down here it's much more like the XLTs, where it really kicks them out. I really think that's a really happy medium between the two, because a lot of people either like a lot of kick out or they'll like that rebound to really stay close. And I think that this makes a lot of sense, that the top of it actually deadens it while the bottom actually deflects it away, because what happens is when you're in your butterfly and that puck hits the front of the pad, you want it to stay there because you're still square to the puck if it does come back out. However, if it hits on this lower portion, it may go over to the side and you're no longer square to the puck. So it makes more sense from the perspective of the puck that you want this portion right here to kick that rebound out straight, and that way you're able to get the rebound, while over here that's going to kick it out in a way, and that way it gives you ample time to get over and make a recovery and make the next save. Now, flipping the pad over, we can see where the pad really differentiates itself from the other pads. But I want to first go through the pad in the way that I've changed it, because obviously this is a retail model, and then I went ahead and made a couple snips here and there to make it more like the style that I prefer, which is actually really nice because I could really do that with this pad. So let's go through those first. Now, looking up at the top here, you can see that I've actually removed some straps. These were originally nylon straps, and I wasn't really used to nylon, but I've actually gotten really used to it, and I really like it. If for nothing else, because it's very easy to remember where was that strap before. So sometimes it can be a little bit more difficult. With other pads, I may have the 5th hole and then the 3rd hole, and other ones it would be, 3rd, 4th, 5th hole. And these, if they're nylon, you don't have to remember that at all. They're just always there. However, I know that I don't like straps up here at the top, and I don't like them in through the knee lock as well. So I went ahead and removed those, and actually they were adjustable and removable, but I went ahead and made some snips because I didn't really like the extra material up there. Now, a major change that I made is, of course, I took out the entire knee lock. Well, not the entire knee lock because this portion still exists, but I went ahead and removed everything else. It was extremely easy, just like with the XLTs when I removed that one. And what that does is it gives me a little bit extra rotation, and I really like my pads to be able to go in towards the 5 hole, so it's not really a big deal for me. So if you wanted to do something similar, you could certainly do that, or you can just keep the knee lock there. Now, where this pad really differentiates itself is in the leg channel. You can see here it's actually angled so that it goes towards the inside. At the same time, it's also tapered. So this portion right here is angled towards the inside, towards the knee, and that makes a lot of sense from a kinesiological standpoint because your leg is going to be positioned going down and hitting the knee lock right here. So it makes a lot of sense. Now at the same time, you're going to have that big bulky knee guard. So you're going to need that extra room, so they really built in that taper in order to allow you a very large knee guard, which the Koho knee guards are pretty large. And we're going to go through those in another review. So I think they've done a really good job here in making sure that anatomically speaking and kinesiologically speaking, everything fits really well. Now with this Sure Grip Nash material right here in the leg channel, as well as the overall positioning of your leg, you get very good control of the bottom of the pad. And that's extremely important for me, because while I keep it a little bit tight up here in the calf, I actually keep it really loose in the bottom. And because these Velcro straps, I keep them moderately loose, it actually performs really well, especially when you get down to the bottom and this is really tight in through here, so you can maintain control even though your setup may be a little looser. Now down here in the boot portion, it actually sits up very high on your skate. And I really like that on my pads because I want this pad to sit up as high as possible on my skate, and that way it blocks more 5-hole and it provides more coverage when I'm in my stance. Now one thing I want to mention one more time are these knee rolls. And these are very interesting because when I saw the pictures, they looked very, very pronounced. And I was a little worried about not only the sliding, but also whether I'd get a really nice seal on the ice. And I am very glad to be able to say this gets a very nice seal. Not only because these are a little bit squishy, but just the front of it tends to come down and really cover that 5-hole. Now, at the same time, a concern there is with sliding, especially if these are going to be a little squishy. And these slide very similar to my XLTs, which are probably the best sliding pads I've ever had, and they work out really well. So it wasn't a hindrance whatsoever to have these very pronounced knee rolls. And in fact, as far as the pucks coming in and hitting them, it deadened that rebound and worked exactly as advertised. So I really enjoyed that. Now there's nothing truly innovative about the blocker, and that's perfectly fine because I really like CCM and Reebok blockers. And this blocker right here is much more similar to the CCM than the Reebok. Now both of them have very similar designs. However, you can see in the cuff right here, this is a one-piece cuff going all the way around, whereas the XLT only has a partial cuff going along the bottom and not this top portion right here. Now, about the protectiveness and the balance of this blocker. The protectiveness is just exactly the same as you would find with a CCM or a Reebok blocker. And in fact, I actually took a shot off right here. And basically what I did was I used the inside of my blocker as the blocker itself on a full-on slapper, and it worked. So that was really interesting. I thought maybe I'd feel a little bit of a ding, and I didn't feel anything at all. And you can see here, it has a lot of layers of protectiveness. So no matter what you're going to face on the blocker side, this is definitely going to deaden that. Now if we flip over the blocker, and I'm going to put it on here and do the usual balance test, put it forward, you can see it is perfectly well balanced, which is exactly what I want to see. It does not tip towards the inside, nor does it tip to the outside. It is just perfectly balanced. And that's exactly what I like in a blocker. So this works out really well too. Now one more thing with this blocker. If I show you guys the inside right here, there is this Sure Grip material right here, and it works out really well. So that if your stick gets some ice or some water on it, you'll still get adequate grip throughout your stick. Works out really well for stick handling and making sure that you're getting an adequate deflection every time using your blocker. Last but not least is the trapper, and I really like this trapper. This is a 590 brake, which it is available in both the 580 and the 590 brake, whichever one you want depending on your preference. Now I really like the 590, and this gives you the exact angle as your other 590 gloves, whether it's the XLT or the new CCMs, and it works out really well for stick handling and for catching, especially if you're in that fingers up position like I like to use. Now, again, there's not a whole lot new or innovative about the catching glove over the Reebok or the CCM. It's still that tried and true design, and that's exactly what I want from a consistency standpoint. There are a couple differences with the back of the glove. There's actually a little less protection in the back. However, I've had multiple slashes back here. In fact, I had a full-on shot hit me on the back of the hand, and I didn't feel anything whatsoever. Now, if I open up the back of the glove right here, I can show you guys the multiple options you have for adjusting your glove. And you can see here, you have the traditional wrist strap right here, which isn't really the industrial version that you get on the XLTs, but it works out perfectly fine. And then there are multiple hand connection points, so you're able to adjust it for whatever preference you have. So if you really like the look and the feel of your typical Reebok and CCM glove set and leg pads, these are definitely right in line with those. It's a little bit of a mixture of the XLTs and the CCMs, so it works out really well. If you don't like a pad that really deadens the rebound, and you don't like a pad that really kicks it back on out, you might really want to try these Koho 589s. And at the same time, you're going to get a glove set that feels right in line with the rest of the sets as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed the review. Definitely check it out on goaliemonkey.com, and good luck, and I'll see you out on the ice.